With Deltarune's somewhat recent surge in popularity with the release of Chapter 4 and the game finally coming to Steam after all this time, a common question has started to emerge from both dedicated players and people checking out the game for the first time. With this question essentially boiling down to, do I need to play Undertale before I check out Deltarune? Which is a topic I want to briefly go over in this video to give you my experience, at least as someone who's played both Undertale and Chapters 1 and 2 of Deltarune. So with that out of the way, let's get into the main pros and cons of playing the game raw or just coming in with a bit of experience. So I'm going to be splitting this section of the video into 5 different parts, explaining how playing Undertale beforehand will either help or harm a user's experience in some key ways, with the key sections I'll be going over being as follows. 1. Gameplay, 2. Story/characters, 3. The different routes you could take, 4. Callbacks to previous games, with that game being Undertale, and the final and 5th one being hype. Now, I think these areas are the most important when it comes to talking about playing Undertale before Deltarune, as they'll have the most impact. Of course, there are several others, but I just feel these are the most important. So, with that out of the way, let's get into number 1. So, first of all, let's get the obvious out of the way here. Deltarune and Undertale's gameplay are very similar to each other, both being 2D story-style RPGs where you fight as a heart in a box and your decisions alter how the story ends up. With that in mind, playing Undertale beforehand will definitely help prepare someone for Deltarune's gameplay, far more than a total noob to the franchise ever could be, with you already having experience with things like dodging attacks and timing your attacks properly. Overall, the biggest adjustment someone would have to make from Undertale to Deltarune is getting used to the TP system or tension points. As well as factors like having 3 characters to maintain instead of 1. There are a couple of things that complicate the system as well as spells, but it's generally the same. Things like acting, fighting, and items are all carried over, so playing Undertale beforehand will definitely help smooth out the adjustment process to the game. So overall, while you don't need to play Undertale before you play Deltarune, as there's obviously a tutorial and a game manual that you could open in-game whenever you need it, it would definitely help a new player out, so it's not a bad idea. If you've seen any amount of Undertale media, whether it be fan-made or official, you should probably pick up on the fact that many characters and their dynamics carry over from Undertale to Deltarune. This stuff can range from as high tension as things like the divorce, or something more funny like Burger Pan still being the same old depressed middle-aged teenager. While most of this can be picked up on naturally, I won't lie that so much staying the same even though the games are so different will put a smile on any Undertale fan's face. So, while you don't need to play Undertale by any means to understand Deltarune's stories or characters, it is a nice plus, and I think it makes the gameplay more exciting for returning players. As we all probably know, both games have a differing storyline depending on the decisions you make. In Undertale you have the pacifist, genocide, and neutral routes, and in Deltarune you have the normal and weird routes. Both are determined by how you treat the characters and how violent you are, and the effects these decisions have on the storyline. A returning player from Undertale will probably know the impact these decisions have, while a new player probably won't. So playing Undertale beforehand will allow players to better pick the path they want to follow. But that does come at the cost of stumbling into a good or bad ending based on your natural decisions. Within Deltarune, there are several references to things that occurred in Undertale. This is shown through the section on characters that was mentioned earlier in the video, as well as several other smaller callbacks like the names of certain places or minor character interests. If you take in both the world of Undertale and Deltarune, you'll start to notice tiny references everywhere, which is always fun for a returning player. While this isn't needed to be taken in by the world, it does help immersion to an extent if you know what's being referenced, and the only other property that is similar to Undertale and Deltarune in this way, at least that I've seen, is probably something like jojos, where you could watch each individual part on its own, but you'll get a full experience if you watch each part chronologically altogether, with past characters and organizations being referenced fairly often. Since there's all this previous build-up with characters involved in the Undertale and Deltarune lore, there is an expectation for these characters to play some kind of a role in Deltarune. This of course builds hype for the people waiting for their favorite characters to do something, and leads to moments like this.
Sense?
People who've never played Undertale before either won't buy into this hype or won't understand it, and I can say that your enjoyment of the hype is directly harmed by not playing Undertale beforehand. Though, at this point, Deltarune has gotten so popular that maybe it could loop around the other way, and Deltarune fans could get hyped playing Undertale for the first time and seeing some of their favorite characters in that game. Kinda weird to think about. So here we are, the final decision. Do you need to play Undertale first or not? And I would say no, but it does make the experience better if you do. So if you want the most immersive, lore-filled, reference-fest experience ever, I do recommend you play Undertale, as you miss out a lot on being out of the loop playing Deltarune. But if you're just looking for a fun and engaging story-based RPG to play, Deltarune on its own is perfectly fine. With its own story and characters to lean on, it's definitely its own experience. The best analogy I could really come up with was the JoJo's comparison from earlier, and if you're familiar with that franchise, I think you can see where I'm coming from. The experience isn't totally reliant on previous material, but it does build on it, which could make it worth your time to check out Undertale if you got the time or the money. But really, at the end of the day, it's up to you. So, with that in mind, I'm going to end this video here. Check out the Discord server if you want to, and thanks for watching.